Spielberg once was quoted as saying, "I feel I'm all over my movies. I know all my movies are all over me." The cinematic mind of Steven Spielberg has created some of cinema's most entertaining and memorable films, from Jaws to Saving Private Ryan. As a filmmaker, Spielberg has directed, produced, or executive produced 7 of the 20 top-grossing films of all time, including Jurassic Park and E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Worldwide, his films have grossed more than any other filmmaker before him, and at the rate his career continues, that record will most likely hold for many years to come. Born on December 18, 1946, in Cincinnati, Ohio, Spielberg was raised in the suburbs of Haddonfield, New Jersey, and Scottsdale, Arizona. He started making amateur films while still in his teens. His desire to tell stories, as he will readily tell you, began very early in life.
I love ghost stories. I've always loved them. And I used to frighten my sisters with them. I used to frighten myself with them. And I just like telling ghost stories. And it's fun around the campfire when it's, the only light is the light that's on your faces. And if you take a few steps back, it's pitch black. Without a flashlight, you can't see your way back to your tent. It was always fun thinking I'd tell a really scary story. And everybody would be so scared going back to the tents. And I wound up not frightening them as much as I frightened myself. I keep myself up awake. I turn my flashlight on. I just have a night light until the batteries went to yellow and then disappeared, and I'd have no light at all. I would always wind up frightening myself more than other people. The very earliest memory that I recall that associated itself to filmmaking was this urgent need to not be punished by my parents for wrecking my Lionel train set. They would break sometimes, and my dad got frustrated one day, and he said to me, "If I have to take one of these trains one more time back to the Lionel shop to get repaired, I'm taking the entire train set away from you. That's the end." And I remember trying to figure out, well, how can I have this thrill of the great train wreck and not be deprived of my train? So I borrowed his little 8mm movie camera. I actually filmed the train wreck. And all the cuts, which I didn't really understand what I was doing, but it was sort of intuitively, I knew that if one train went left to right, and the second train and another cut went right to left, and they both met in the middle with the third cut, it's pretty much what I used to do when I used to stick my eye down within an inch above the tracks to get the perspective of the trains going by when I was playing with my train set. And I did that on film. It didn't wreck the trains too bad, but I was able to run the film over and over again, and I really believe that was the first time I realized the power of film, to be able to get away with something and not get punished for it.
What they're saying is I'm
You broke out of pre-release?
Oh, shut up, mind your own business.
You broke your husband out of pre-release?
Well, you're assuming an awful lot for a man your size.
Who's that? An unemployed beautician. You been taking money from Donna Hyde?
No, I quit.
You got $65, you ain't never seen work. What you been doing 3 weeks? You been running around?
I have not.
You're lying.
I am not lying.
Don't lie to me.
Don't you call me no liar. Donnie Hyde and Bill Fales ain't running around. That's just beering.
Succeeded, and we began.
I just got through reading it when they called. So I said, sure, but it needs this, and it needs that, and then they gave me the screenplays later, and the screenplays were all, there's about 3 or 4 of them, they were all off in different directions. Some of them changing the whole storyline completely, so that didn't seem adequate. And then, but Stephen and I rewrote it. We did in fact, he was back east in the Hamptons on the summer, and I was up in Northern California, Mount Shasta, so we wrote it by fax machine. I'd dictate some pages here and then I'd fax them to him, and he would make some changes and dictate some pages on other scenes and send them back and forth. So we did this for about a week, and finally we agreed that this was the screenplay.
I realized that he had been here just a few minutes before. I was lying where the water had run down his body, and I found that intensely erotic. Almost everything about Robert Kincaid had begun to seem erotic to me.
Merrill.
Steven, he said, I'm going to do a movie with George Lucas, an adventure film. We don't know all that much about it, but I'd like you to come meet George, and I've shown him the script Continental Divide, and he's very interested in you writing this adventure film for us. And George said, we want to do a movie that's like the old serials. And I don't know too much about it. The hero is named after my dog, Indiana.
And directed.
There was a moment after I first saw Raiders of the Lost Ark where the difference between what I had imagined and what was on the screen was great enough I was very young and very innocent and had a purist sense about what I had written, that I was actually disappointed. And now I can look at Raiders and know that Steven probably directed that movie as well as it could possibly have been made. And that my dissatisfaction, momentary at the time, was a function of my youth and this sort of purist mentality. But yes, no matter how well you're served by another director, for me as a writer, it's never satisfying.
We haven't got all day.
Hang on, where are we going?
You wouldn't want to miss chemistry class, would you?
By the way, what's your name?
Holmes. Sherlock Holmes.
I was attracted to young Sherlock because I love the Victorian period, and I thought I'd love to kind of play in there and create a kind of world of Victorian England. And I wanted to learn about special effects too. Not that I'm going to rely on them or they're going to be part of what I do all the time. But I do think you have to understand all that. You have to understand all the new tools that keep coming to film. And generally with special effects things, they need to be in the script and discussed and elaborated on, and then all of that input that can take things to another stage, or how to accomplish something that no one's sure how to pull that off. In the church, where we have the sequence with the stained glass man that comes out, jumps out, stained glass thing comes down, and it's a real person, and the vicar is backing up, and he's having a hallucination. And I had said, what happens if we kind of come around? It's like, we see him coming towards us, and the camera keeps moving around until we're over the shoulder of the stained glass man looking back at the vicar. So we're just making this complete, move. And they said, well, it's interesting, we've not done that kind of a thing. I said, well, why don't we just shoot it and see if it's possible that we can make that work? But that was the first time of being able to make those kinds of, moves. Of course, now, that it's taken for granted as the technology keeps advancing.
The story of Back to the Future happened like this. After Used Cars, we wrote Back to the Future. And there was that 3-year span where I couldn't get a job directing. I wasn't offered anything that I wanted to direct until Romancing the Stone came along. I have a stack of rejection letters from everybody, every studio in town, except one guy, and that was Steven, who read it and said, yeah, I'll make this. And at the time, he had produced my first 2 movies, which were failures at the box office. So I said, Steven, if you produce this movie and this one doesn't perform, my career will probably be over. And he said, yeah, you're probably right. So he understood that completely. He said, because then I said, I'll be perceived as a guy who can only make a movie if you produce it. So then after I made Romancing the Stone, then everybody who had rejected Back to the Future wanted to make Back to the Future. So I felt that it was only appropriate to take it to the one guy who had faith in it from the beginning. By this time, Steven's name had become synonymous with a certain type of film. I mean, it had become a brand name. And to have him associated with Back to the Future, in my opinion, was like a perfect fit.
the screenplay. And the inspired idea in the screenplay is in the first 3 pages, where the cartoon character steps out of a cartoon, and we realize that it slowly, visually, takes us into this unbelievable world where cartoon characters interact with human characters. And I said, now that I get. And then Steven was incredibly instrumental, because he is the only guy on the planet who was able to get all the competing cartoon characters from all the competing studios in one movie.
And from the smell of him, I'd say, Roger, I know this seems pretty painful now, but you'll find someone new. Won't he, Mr. Bennett?
Yeah, sure. Good-looking guy like that, Dames will be breaking his door down.
Dames? What dames? Don't think I'm the only one for me. You'll see. We'll ride above this building picadillo. We're gonna be happy again. Got that? Happy. H-A-P-P-I.
Well, at least you took it well.
Fear was a project that De Niro asked me to do, and also Spielberg. And I just come off Goodfellas, and Steve always told me, he said, I'm going to do a picture, I'm going to produce a picture someday of yours, and it's going to make the most money you've ever made. Not that I will make it personally, but the film will have made it, of course. So I changed certain aspects of the story that were more to my taste, and De Niro had a great desire to play Max.
You don't think you're better than me?
No, I don't think I'm better than you. That's not the goddamn point.
Good, because if you're not better than me, then I can have what you have.
What do I have?
A wife, a daughter. I'm going to teach you the meaning of commitment. 14 years ago, I was forced to make a commitment to an 8x9 cell. Now you're going to be forced to make a commitment. You could say I'm here to save you.
The nature of the...
I just get a lot of ideas about movies I want to make. I love, like I said, I love telling stories. And, when I get tired of telling stories, publicly telling stories, then I'll retire from that and I'll tell stories to my kids. I'll continue telling them privately. But I don't think that'll ever happen. I just like, I love doing this job. It's a great job to have, when I can, be a part of somebody else's dream and putting that dream on the screen, or if I can get an idea from my, naked brain in the middle of the night and write it down on the back of a, piece of paper, and 18 months later, whatever's on the back of that piece of paper is a big movie or a small movie. I mean, that is the stuff that makes all of us want to, work in this business and create and have fun. What makes me want to direct, as opposed to makes me want to produce, is just how hard the tug is in here. I mean, it has to tug me to want to put my name on anything and get involved in anything. The films I make here at DreamWorks, I've got to say, wow, what a good story. I want to share that. That's how people should see this movie. But if it really pulls me, I know that difference. It's a bigger tickle, that gets me to say, I'm not giving this away. I'm keeping this for myself. That's a much bigger tickle.